Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here. And as I watched the news last night and the news this morning on coverage relating to Charlie Kirk's shooting and killing, I see the media already failing us once again. And what they are doing is irresponsible on so many of these networks and platforms. They are doing, of course, the right thing in condemning political violence. That should be obvious. That's absolutely part of their job. And so I expect that, and that is a great thing. And more of that condemnation absolutely needs to be happening. But what they are not doing is they are not holding political leaders responsible for their rhetoric. The fact of the matter is, I didn't watch Trump's press conference about or statement about this that he did last night until this morning. And it hasn't even been 24 hours. Within hours, he's already talking about radical left political violence. He's even going back 8 years to Steve Scalise, 2017, and that shooting. And the fact of the matter is, this man is not the leader that's going to lead this country and bringing people together, because he is a violent man himself and he calls out violence all of the time. And so do so many of his people, of other Republican so-called leaders. The media needs to call this out. You can't just sit here and say on television, I don't call them the right because they're wrong, but those on television can't just say, yes, we see violence coming from those on the right, we see violence coming from those on the left, and it's a problem, and so on. It has to be called out. Trump was talking about, we're going to go after him, this monster, this killer. We don't know if this man was Republican, Democrat, so on and so forth. We don't know anything about this killer. We also know that Trump did not have similar statements for other fellow politicians like Hortman in Minnesota. I don't think the flags flew at half staff, and he didn't even want to call the governor of Minnesota because, like he said, quote unquote, I don't like him. This is what he does. It's been great to see Republican and Democratic offices in some states or some cities put out joint statements about this killing of Charlie Kirk. That type of unity and things we want to see. But we also know that Republicans would not be putting out joint statements with Democrats when these shootings happen, when this violence happens. They don't do that. This needs to be called out. Nancy Mace walks out of people. So people talk about, let's not talk about the crazy stuff Laura Loomer said and other people like that, or Steve Miller's wife said and everything. Nancy Mace walks out of the Capitol yesterday and says, this is on the hands of the blood is on the Democrats. They have blood on their hands. They did this. They got Charlie Kirk killed. This needs to be called out. These are not the leaders who are going to bring us together. These are the leaders who benefit and profit off of promoting violence. It's like being in a house and you're trying to get siblings to come together after, years of sibling rivalries and all of that, but you're not talking about, the mother or, the father who's been the one sowing the dissension because of favorite child status and all of this other type of stuff. That's like a really small example. But my point is, you can't sit here and point fingers at everybody else and not look at the leadership at the top. J.D. Vance apparently, they see, is very close with Charlie Kirk and the like, and is out there visiting the family and everything. I don't expect J.D. Vance to be the person who's going to come out and call for everybody to stop the rhetoric and obviously call out his own party. That's the type of leadership that is needed right now, and that's the type of leadership we never get from the Trump administration. And I was listening to a student who said, yeah, all of these times over the years, all they do is they talk about us being the racists and the fascists and being the ones who talk about political violence and everything. But look what happened. The last two assassination attempts were on Charlie Kirk and Trump. Seriously? We're going to seriously just ignore? Does this, and I wonder, does this student even know, because of the silo that he is in, does he even know about the arson on Governor Shapiro's home? Does he even know about the assassinations of the two politicians out of Minnesota? The echo chamber that people are in right now. I even wonder if some of these young people and some of these other, MAGA supporters even know about some of the violence that is taking place in our society against people who are not part of MAGA or conservatives or Republicans. I repeat, Donald Trump is not the leader to lead us through this. These Republicans are not the people who are going to lead us through this. The bipartisan condemnations that you're seeing right now, it's not going to happen when it happens with Democrats. And if we're going to be honest, much of the political violence comes from people who are on the extreme Republican side of things, or the extreme MAGA or the MAGA side of things. According to the Anti-Defamations League Center on Extremism, they report that 2024 was the third year in a row in which all the extremist-related killings in the United States were carried out by extreme people on that side of the aisle. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. And you could run down the list, whether it's Melissa Hortman, whether we're talking about shootings at homes of Democratic officials, whether we're talking about people who wanted to hang Mike Pence, whether we're talking about Gretchen Whitmer, like Heather Heyer, we can run down the list. The majority of these people were Trump supporters. Does that mean that I'm going to sit here and say that it's just, this whataboutism? No, because it's just like I said in my post yesterday, it's all wrong. And yes, people who identify, with the left have engaged in violence, whereas the leaders on the left of the Democratic Party have not engaged in violent rhetoric at this level. So the media, y'all need to be very responsible in this moment. You can't just have the generic calls for unity, can't just say this is hearkening back to the 60s and bring up King and the Kennedys and Edgar and say we're here again and so on and not call out the people who are doing. And you find Democratic leaders who are saying the types of things that Trump was saying in his speech last night, call it out too. He blamed this entire thing, all of the rhetoric, all of the violence happening in this country, he blamed it on Democrats and the left. He's using this as an opportunity to create more violence in this country, to create more targeting in this country. Biden wasn't even president, and he went to the memorial for the two Minnesota politicians who were assassinated. He went there to pay his respects. You don't hear the violence, violent rhetoric coming out. He was acting as if he was still the president. And I pray this doesn't happen. But, a Democrat of some sort or a Democratic leader of some sort could get assassinated or killed today or tomorrow, and you will not see this response from Republicans. They are engaged in whataboutism. Again, going back to Steve Scalise and ignore all of it, which was horrific, of course, and ignore everything that's happened between now and then 8 years. Nancy Pelosi, again, her husband, who Trump mocked. Trump brought up the man who was killed when at his assassination attempt, but he also mocked him at a rally later, talking about, remember the wife said that, she wished he was a firefighter, I believe. The wife, correct me if I'm wrong, the wife said, she wished she had him back. And remember Trump at a rally saying, she said she wished she had him back. I don't know, I might take the money. Like, this is Trump. This is the same man who, after his attempt, people thought, well, maybe at the Republican National Convention, he's going to show a different tone. And he did show a different tone for about 4 minutes into his speech. And then everything was about violence and retribution and all of this other type of stuff. This is who he is. He is fundamentally a violent man. And there is no politician. There is no elected leader, Republican or Democrat, who has called for more violence and more retribution and more of everything than the President of the United States. And any media outlet that is not going to be honest about that, even as they condemn all political violence as they should, is not being part of the solution. You're being part of the problem because you are sugarcoating what's actually been happening over these last few years. And if people want to talk about blood on people's hands, is there blood on the media's hands for doing stuff like this? I don't know. But what I know is that they spend too much time trying to both sides of this argument. And I didn't watch Fox last night, but I'm hearing that one of the commentators was calling for some type of race war. Please, somebody let me know in the chat if I'm wrong about this. But we know the rhetoric they put out every day. We know that they're not going to call for any type of peace on both sides. They are already also targeting people who are on the political left for reprisals, for all types of things. This is who we are. And until we get honest with that, all of this talk about coming together and so on and so forth, but not actually calling out people by name, starting with the president that are promoting this. Just his response last night was not unifying. We're on the, commemoration of 9/11, 24 years ago, today. People are talking about, that coming together and so on and so forth. The nation came together for a few days, maybe a little bit longer on some levels, but we went back to normal. This Trump statement, and I'll put a link to it. I'm not going to play it here. I'll put a link in it if you want to watch it. This was within hours. We have to be real about who we are as a country. We have to be real about who we are in America. And if the media is not gonna do that, you got to understand that you are part of the problem and not part of the solution. I repeat, Trump is not the man who is going to lead us towards peace. He is going to lead us towards more division and more destruction. And the sooner we can get honest about that, the sooner we might be able to get somewhere as a country. Let me know what you think. Peace.